5%.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to December 5 meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We have a rather full agenda for tonight, so I'd like to get underway. And I'll ask Jonathan to lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The agenda consists of an update on the preparation of the request for proposal for both zoning and economic impact analysis, a presentation of approach to recommendation number 44 in the master plan, which happens to be one of our committee's initial 7 tasks having to do with a transportation advisory team, and Gary Lacroix will be leading that effort. A brief discussion of liaison tasks follows, and then a very brief update and discussion of 2 agency announcements of opportunities. One of them is actually apply for funds, the other is, I think, apply for work. And a very brief survey and discussion of near-term tasks and projects that may require town funding on our part, and one of them has been identified as administrative support, and if there are any others, we'll discuss that at that time. Then we'll have public input, reading of the minutes, and hopefully adjourn at a reasonable hour. So, without further ado, I'll start off with item A, a very brief update on the preparation of our request for proposals. Mike Fontanelle and I had been working on this for about, 8-9 days after we collaborated on putting together a draft of both aspects of the RFP. We passed that draft on to Maren for some expert insertions and editing, because I do understand from looking at other zoning and other proposals put forward that there are some requirements that are, shall we say, unique or special to zoning that we have to pay attention to. And she very quickly, Maren, I'm happy to report, very quickly turned it around. And so now Gary and I are going to go to school and, as it were, absorb this, and hopefully be able to bring you, I hope by the next meeting, because Mike and I have already set up a schedule to meet and do the further editing and bring it to the committee to show you where we are. And hopefully get some more good suggestions of things that I'm sure all of us in our best efforts still may have missed or misplaced.
You still on that topic?
Yeah, I'll have it for discussion.
Okay. Two questions. One is the draft you're working on, is it flexible enough to allow, are you putting it out as 2 separate things you're looking, so you're looking for one respondent to answer both? Okay, that's fine.
Right.
I just want to be sure of that. Yeah, I know that was kind of where we were at with the discussion.
Yeah, and the reason that I did it in 2 chunks for editing purposes, mainly because I didn't want to preempt the various editors' decisions about how it should be put in for presentation.
I think it gets us to a point, the 2 positives in my mind, it's kind of water over the dam, but one is you get critical mass in the amount of the contract, then you're going to attract better applicants. And 2, rather than having 2 people out there coming up to speed on something, you have one outfit coming up to speed with 2 different sub-teams.
Yep. And we also don't necessarily, I agree with the proposed 2 of combining them into a single one, because we're making an educated guess as to what the value of each one of these things are, but it could be that when you have both in the same pot, then they can kind of compensate for each other.
Well, they are definitely, at this moment, very complementary to each other. Yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then just my second point is a matter of scheduling, knowing where we're at with our, our schedule and our intentions to get this off the ground. I mean, I'm all for blessing in advance whatever it is you guys come up with so that we can get it out the door and on the street. I don't know, otherwise we're waiting till January to review it and then put it out?
I'm trying to stay with, I'm trying to satisfy both requirements, the urgency of time, and number 2, making sure something doesn't go out that later committee members feel somehow or other things that we said were missed.
Well, and I'm just offering this, and maybe Maren has the most experience in this, but if you put out a draft that we all got a chance to see,
Yeah.
through the email, unless you object, this is what's going out, do it that way. And if somebody says, I heartily object, well, then we hold off and, and we address it in January.
I'm hoping by next meeting, everyone will have had in their hands,
Well, the next meeting is when?
January the 10th.
Okay, but that means we're not getting it out into the street until the end of January, right?
No, I think we could, I think the next draft should do it,
All right.
I hope.
Today is December
I'm going as fast as the editors allow me.
All right.
And
Well, I'm just offering an opportunity to go faster. If, for instance, you finished in the next couple of days, why wait till January 10th?
I'll be very happy to send it out in advance, if the rules allow me to distribute it that way for, for feedback. I just want to make sure that we're following the
I
process.
think a key here, and I'll ask again, Marge, who deals with the board every week, is the extent to which the authority we give you in advance
Yeah.
at a regular posted meeting
Right.
determines how,
Yes.
what you can do. So if, we've essentially vetted all the terms of it, right? I mean, how much,
The scope,
how much mystery can be left? It's language.
Language matters in a
Yeah.
contract, so.
I would like to see, I would like to see
I'd like to
it
take a
myself.
chop at it too.
I mean, however, I just want to warn folks, because you take a shot at it, the editors reserve the right to edit your edits.
Sure.
It goes from incorporation to partial to, well, we can't put that in at this time.
Well, if that's gonna be the case, then we better make sure everybody's at the January 10th meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Or in that we get the copy enough in advance so that edits can be, suggested edits can be forwarded in advance
That would be
so
the-
that we
that'd
can,
be
we
ideal.
can do all that, that night.
Yep.
So that's a resolution of comments and blessing at that meeting.
But it'll be blessed probably before you get it, otherwise, I mean, because the.
Just following that in logic, and we're not gonna be hiring anybody till now about May or April.
No. Okay, I've tried to, I'm in the process of contacting a number of, I'll call them, not qualified, but basically the kinds of folks we would like to see work on this, to have discussions, and so far the feedback has been, I would say, not just positive because they see a thing out there, that they like that combination, and apparently some of them actually have the talent to do it.
Well, that's great. I'm glad, and I'm happy you made that outreach, because I'm sure it informed some of the work you and Mike are doing.
I got actual price, I mean, I got offered.
But I wasn't being facetious about my comments a few moments ago. If we vote, and even if we agree on something by January,
Yeah.
and then the next wheels internally that have to spin to get it out the door in the middle or the latter part of January, and we give them a month to respond, now we're talking February, before we're looking at responses, and then we're interviewing people into March, and we're not hiring anybody until April, who may not begin work until May. So that's, any month gained, I'm not,
Okay.
I'm doing it for a reason, I'm trying to get us.
No, I understand that, I was just trying not to.
Because I'd like to be coming back in May, asking for our next batch of asks, but they're gonna say, what did you do with the last one? Well, those people haven't come on board yet. That's, I've been on that with the sewer, we've kind of run into that. You wanna make sure that the next, be conscious of our schedule of the next time we're gonna be before the town asking for something. Because if we haven't even got those people on board yet, we're not really in a position to ask for anything more until
That's right.
the next fall. So there's a 6-month swing there, yeah.
Well, then, you might get it faster than.
I'm not
hearing-
doing this to be a pain in the ass, I'm just suggesting it because there's a reason.
No, I agree, but I don't know, even if it was a month earlier, we would have much of a product that would be able to take to the board in May. Much
If
of
we
a-
have
of
the
an answer.
consultants on board, then at least there's a warm body you can put in front of the town meeting and say, here's so-and-so, and they're working on the following.
You can-
Even if they've been doing it for 2 weeks, at that
Okay,
point.
but we won't have anything of tangible.
No, but at least the last thing that they signed off on is in progress. Whereas,
I got it.
as opposed to being the last thing we gave you money for, you haven't even done yet.
Okay.
And the probabilities are very high that we're going to get a good response, because at the moment, I'm very happy to say, just in addition, there are at least 5 very qualified sources
Well,
in Massachusetts who know enough about Littleton to be helpful.
Okay, well, then I'll shut up.
Can I
Yeah, sure.
get a word in edgewise here?
Please.
You're on the wrong side, I guess.
Front-wise.
So you are, I mean, this is just in terms of having one firm do both of the projects, these are close enough,
It's one project.
well, we're now talking about one project, I
No,
thought we,
it's one project. It's basically zoning along with economic impact.
Common.
Yeah.
Then the common.
The common is the common thread.
Yeah.
It's the common.
But the zoning's townwide.
I thought the zoning was townwide, and,
The zoning is emphasizing, the common on this round. That's what we're doing.
Well, my understanding is to clean up language in the zoning
But,
code, which
okay,
is,
there's one part of the zoning, I can see where the confusion now comes from. There's one part of the zoning called diagnostic, that is, does it conform to state and federal law? That's question number one. And that question, I've already mentioned this before, can be done at a minimum by our town council. It's not that complex, nor is it that demanding or widespread. So that one, although it's part of our effort, it's not the major part. The major part is what, if any, changes should be made to our existing zoning in order to accommodate development.
since that is wholly in the hands of the planning board, the implementation of that, and I think the genesis of that concern, I would defer to the planning board on whether or not they think it can wholly be done by council in-house. Because I think there might be I don't want to underscore that part of the project. I think it's,
I agree with you, Paul.
Okay, if it gets included, it is not a major component of the effort. It won't disturb our schedule.
it shouldn't disturb the schedule, but then people just need to understand what we're asking you to do is, while we're focusing on the common, as a part of that, you need to be, we want you to review all of our zoning so that everything that we've done is,
It's legal, yeah.
well, illegal, and we haven't done two different things in 5 years apart that contradict each other, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Isn't that part of the concerns, Byron?
Well, yeah.
and secondly, I guess I've been somewhat, I guess I haven't understood fully what was happening here. I thought that the sort of study around of the common area would involve more than zoning, that there were other issues involving.
Correct.
And, I mean, I was particularly impressed with the woman who came from the Collins Center, and I thought the kinds of things that she talked about, while they did involve zoning, they involved a whole lot of other things that were not zoning, and those would be the kind of studies that I would anticipate us getting. And you agree with that that is what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's the economic impact analysis.
Okay.
That's what she came, that was part of her history that she talked about. Yeah.
Yes.
In other words, if we do this, what are the consequences?
Yeah.
The ups and it's economic and lifestyle together.
Yeah, okay.
Well, then I guess I'll go back and I'll underscore what Gary said earlier, the details do matter. We might be calling it these two things, and I don't care what titles we use, as long as the details match up with what our expectations are. And which frankly, even though we're calling it two, there's kind of threefold. There's our need to do the greater updating of the zoning, which is townwide. We're kind of piggybacking that in with zoning issues around the common, which is actually zoning map issues and use issues as a much more so than language issues.
Yeah.
And then there's the third part, which is the bigger picture you get off the zoning map. What are the economic impact issues, which I think the way we've been talking about it includes, what are the aesthetic components, the real world components, what's it going to look like, what are the infrastructure things, the non-zoning things that are incorporated in it, and then, what does it cost to do them, and then what do you get out of it if you do
Yes,
that?
it's, you got it.
Okay.
Well, I think there's a step
Good,
in
it's
there.
on tape, we got
There's
it.
a step in there before that too,
Yeah.
which is development of a plan that would then produce the associated products and stuff like
Fine,
that.
yes, and that's kind of the deliverables we're expecting out of this consultant.
We're expecting actual, what we call zoning proposals, renditions, at least 4 renditions of the common for economic analysis. I'm just giving you the top
Well,
level.
I think you ought to go back, we were just talking about all of us, it should be incorporated in that language of expectations.
Yeah.
Just having gone through this with the prior consultant, the big one there, anything that didn't make it into writing was gone.
That's one of the reasons I'm trying to, okay, we're talking about the same thing, just.
Okay, I think we're on I feel much happier now that I think we're on the right track. Paul's expansion of this was very helpful.
So then in the spirit of kumbaya, I won't have as much problem with January 10th as long as the interval between now and then also adopts an aggressive schedule for what happens after January 10 in terms of how quick we get it out, how quick, we're looking for people to respond. As you say, you've already,
Yeah,
approached some folks, so these people are expecting.
Yes, they know it.
And they should be ready to go, and hopefully it won't shock them if we're looking for a response of, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks rather than a month. I mean, is that unreasonable, Myron, or I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I'm gonna.
Depends what we're asking for.
Right, okay. Well, but I think we should be very mindful of the calendar while we're putting together
Right.
Yeah, in talking to, I think I've now finished talking over the phone and having coffee with a total of 9, maybe it's 10 groups. And I have to say, the ones that I'm not enthused about are the ones who can't carry out the whole package. They don't have the on-board talent or the background or the experience.
Good.
Okay. Okay, let's move now to discussion of item number 44 in the master plan. And this arises directly out of Gary's assignment that he took on for transportation, which is very large, very important, and that is, the item is very large and very important.
Okay, so I'll take it from there. So I put together some slides. They're in the packet there. And I don't know, Maren, if you want to cue them up. Oh, thank you.
Well, the one behind you.
So what this is I started engaging with some of the town boards and other, and the highway department specifically. And I was advised maybe I should take a step back here and make sure that I'm doing so with the blessing of the MPIC as to the message I'm sending out, and also somewhat, so I put this in front of you, someone else was a guinea pig, because I think what I provide to you as like where my logic and where I'm going with this is very similar. I could probably use this for other, if I'm meeting with the planning board or the selectmen or other entities as well, to kind of explain why I think this is necessary and why this is important and what the approach that I'm trying to get at. So, so specifically, I want to discuss the approach to getting one of the items, which is item number 44 on the master plan, off the ground. And because, in my opinion, there is no champion for this presently, and it is, I think, a good first step to address some of the transportation needs. So next slide talks about the goals for transportation that come right out of the master plan. The definition of transportation out of Webster's is a means of conveyance to travel from one place to the other. It does not necessarily mean that it has to be a person in a car, which is what people tend to think of with transportation. The overarching goal from the master plan was to improve the safety and ease of getting around town and connecting all the different pieces of Littleton, whatever they may be. I'm paraphrasing. So that goal, I think, was a pretty good, reflective of one of the outreach sessions, specifically number 2, the one in January of last year, where we went into different rooms and we had a transportation one and we had one about economic development. And that, I think, really came out of that session. And the next couple of slides are the 9 goals that are specifically related to transportation. And I went back and counted all the dots that were put on some of those sessions. And the one that got the most dots, as agreed or somewhat agreed to, we agree with this sentiment, was the number 2 one, prepare a comprehensive trail plan, prioritize opportunities to create a network of trails / more pedestrian accessibility. 94 out of 102 people commented that said they agreed or somewhat agreed to that. And the rest were either, I need more information, or I disagreed. 2 disagreed. So pretty strong consensus that is a real priority. Some of these other ones also came right out of those questions that were asked, but that one really did resonate with a lot of people. So in these 9 goals on these 2 slides, I indicated, put an asterisk next to those ones that I don't think necessarily fall within what the highway department would normally be embarking on, because I think the mindset might be, well, the highway department is where most of the transportation issues should reside, and I don't disagree with that. If you look at the matrix, transportation-related elements, highway department shows up with just about every single one of them is either a local government leader or a participant. They have a say in everything. But I know how busy those guys are, and they're often dealing with maintaining of what we currently have and fixing things that really need to be fixed. And they have another number of issues they're dealing with that are already in here, dealing with implementation of, what's the complete streets, or working with the state on mass dot issues, or a number of different things. So out of these 9 items, in my humble opinion, 5 of these don't really have a home within the highway department. So the next slide has to do with a very hard to read slide, if you, that one there. So what I did is I made copies. It's not included in the packet. It's a little easier to read. This is the 67 items in the master plan implementation program. And these are the items that showed up as transportation was a related element, primarily, or we identified as something that was transportation related when we put in our top 7. So there's out of 67 items in the implementation program, 17 of them deal with transportation. 14 specifically are indicated as transportation-related elements. Half of them have highway department as a lead role, and half of them don't. All of them, even with highway department as a lead role, require input from other parts of the town. All are considered high or medium priorities. Transportation was one of the 3 things when we bandied about what are the 3 things we wanted to put in our cover letter from the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. Transportation, improving intermodal transportation was one of the 3. And it was definitely one of our initial 7. And of those initial 7, there were 9 elements within transportation in that 7. That was more than any other item in those 7. The conclusion here is that transportation is important. It shows up multiple times in the master plan. And it's not just about people moving people in cars on roads. That funding for transportation, for other types of things related to transportation, should be in the mix when we're looking at prioritization of funding and budgets, and services like getting people from one place to the other, maybe in a shuttle, or expanding the elder services shuttle, or any other types of things, should be in the mix. Sometimes a service element can be a relatively small investment that improves the lives of many people, but doesn't have the maintenance and cost of improving infrastructure. And the other thing was that, given the disparity, given how many different people were in the pot of I think I've clearly established that highway is not the only people who care about transportation, that no one entity is responsible for transportation-related issues. So that's a nice segue to item number 44 in the master plan, which says, create a transportation advisory team to coordinate on transportation issues across different departments. So, as we were looking at my chart of taking the ball on transportation issues, it's who's got number 44? And in my opinion, no one's got number 44, because I've clearly established that nobody owns transportation holistically in this town. There's a lot of different little pieces. So my proposal, based upon this entity, the Master Plan Implementation Committee, kind of covering many different elements of the town, and in the charter of getting things going that are in the master plan, my proposal is to...
We should be moving up to the proposal.
Yeah. My proposal is to, next one, is to, keep going, is to, for me to take the lead on getting this thing moving. And so in relationship to that, I've drafted a charter, which is included in the handouts. Don't need to go into slides here, Maren, for this just yet, but because I can paraphrase what it says. But basically, my suggestion is that there be some kind of advisory group that is established by the town. And I don't think it needs to be any kind of formal charter. We could have a charter. Maybe that's appropriate. I'm still new to town government and how these things work. But I'm not looking for us to set up another committee where we need to have, people at large and other types of entities. I see just as a place where those already established committees and town boards meet and discuss transportation issues. How often this happens? I don't know. At least once a year, when each of those entities are deciding on priorities and budgets and their goals for the year. And so maybe someone in BPAC has a chance to be at the table when they're talking about where the limited numbers of money we have goes, and see, can we do something with sidewalks? Or or the planning board is there to hear just how significant, how many people think sidewalks should be part of any kind of development, and maybe they don't, they enforce that when there's a new development coming up. So I'm thinking at least once a year, some kind of meeting would take place, and bunch of them, but that involves a number of different entities, and the entities that I envisioned included the BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Elder Human Services, the Highway Department, the Police Department, the Planning Board, and the Sustainability Committee. And probably someone from the Town Administrator's Office, because I know the Town Administrator has been very active with the Crosstown Connect and other transportation issues, for the reason that I don't think anybody else has them. But definitely, other parts of the town could be involved, like if there was a school committee issue or something like that, that could be involved as well if there was some issues or initiatives to push something related to getting kids back and forth to school. But the point being is creating a forum by which these ideas can be shared and these items can be prioritized. And maybe another time, maybe as issues come up, that, a grant comes up or opportunity comes up, or we have to figure out what we're going to do with this or that, ad hoc, that this forum exists. I have had an initial conversation with the Highway Department. They did think that it was, I'm not trying to speak for them, but they thought it had merit to have something like this. So my request from all you is, and specifically Paul, from your position in the selectmen, is you get your thoughts on me taking the ball on this and get the blessing of the MPIC to engage with other entities in the town regarding this. And I'm also looking for some pragmatic recommendations about just, strategically, how do I get this thing started? And who should I engage with first? And if there's any also wordsmithing proposals on the charter that I put out there. I find it's best to put, instead of thinking theoretically up here with thought balloons, I find it best to put something on paper that people can pick at. So the only reason I did that was just to put something on paper. So I'm welcome to open to suggestions or comments on any of this. Yes, Jonathan?
Well, first of all, I think it's great. I think it's something we need. I think it's great that you proposed it. I think you've done such a wonderful job putting it all together. I mean, not just a few ideas, but you got a lot of stuff down here, and it's really well worked out. So I think it's wonderful, and, keep going with it. A couple of maybe minor suggestions I would have. One of them is that particularly because some of these things aren't really anybody's purview, that having a few citizens on the board would not be a bad thing.
Okay.
Put on my hat now as a husband. My wife was on the station advisory board, the rail station advisory board. And, there were a few people with her on that board, and they learned a lot about things that really and that was good because there's nobody else who was really focused on that kind of thing, except to some extent Keith. I mean, Keith is as Paul said, and maybe you said, is one of the people who's really into that. So that would be one thing that I would suggest. I mean, I don't think it has to be lots and lots of people, but maybe a couple of additional people who have an interest in transportation, but who aren't on one of these other committees.
Okay.
And the second thing, and this has certainly been something that other communities, as I went through this, other communities have done very successfully, and here I'm thinking particularly of Lexington, is that not only, we always talk about the elderly needing transportation, but young people,
Yep.
kids could benefit a lot from that. Kids who either aren't old enough to drive or who don't have cars or something. So I'd like to have a little bit more in there, in these groups that should be involved, something maybe about youth as well as,
Is there such an entity that represents those folks?
Park and Rec?
Park and Rec?
maybe,
Or maybe not, I mean,
or parents association, or whatever that
or
is.
even have a youth member.
Yeah,
Somebody
I mean,
who can, you know, how about the
Student
perspective of somebody
government.
who doesn't have a license, who walks or bikes around town, or, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Noted. Okay.
Okay, so those are my two thoughts, but I mean, I don't, it's not at all meant to be a criticism, because I think you've done a great job, and I think this is really what we were looking for, and I hope we, do more things like this, I mean, because this is a great sort of proposal.
Okay.
I got input on a number of levels, and they're all positive. This looks a lot like, occasionally, I've used the phrase budget orphans to address things in the process that don't have a natural, promoter. It's oftentimes things like open space purchase. Well, who in the, who of all the departments, it's not anybody's thing to do that. Or even the sewers, when we were trying to push that, it's not anybody's national,
Yep.
it's not in my budget, so I don't know. So you've hit the key problem here head on. And while we've done a lot of things, I think, right with transportation projects, it's almost exclusively been through a pretty small channel of Keith and his contacts with the state officials and knowledge of state programs, and he's excellent on that. Chris and, his predecessor, Jim, or whoever, working on what are the highway priorities. And then, as you point out, the highway department may take ownership of some of these things on the delivery end. It's not necessarily it's not part of their charge to come up with the thinking, the recommendations. They're more like, okay, you tell us what, you want us to do, and we'll rev up the truck, and we'll buy the tar, and we'll go do it,
And they do a very good job
They do
with
a
that.
fine job. So, yeah, I think
Very impressed
you're
with
hitting
what they
on the right, exactly the right, transportation falls on the fringes of a lot of little organizations in addition to being, part of the highway department. But if we just left it to highway, then we would perpetuate something that misses a lot. So I agree with you. In ways that this group could impact is, every year when the highway department sits down, not only to do their own budget, but to decide what to prioritize on the tip list, the state transportation improvement program, or how do we spend the state's Chapter 90 funds that we get, or other programs.
Right.
That's where this group's impact could be felt. So I think you makeup of the committee, I think we should think broad, especially if it's not going to be a group that meets that often. Once a year, I think is too small, too infrequent. I would think maybe even quarterly it could meet if it's just a,
Yep.
but because it doesn't have that much of a burden on the each individual members, that maybe it be broad as possible to include everybody who has transportation issues so they're not forgotten. Council on Aging, what are the issues for the seniors? And we mentioned youth in whatever way that they get represented, make sure they're on. And then the trails component, so it keys right into the sidewalk thing. Economic Development Committee, what are the business community, what are they identifying as their transportation issues? Which could be very different. It's the program is already evolving, but the connection between the train station, which is on one part of town, and the main retail hub, which is in another part of town, making sure there's more and more connections. We need to hear from the people who that immediately affects, so we know the details. So I agree with it, and so in terms of participant structure, I think you can work on some of the details. Frequency, I've addressed that. As far as how to get this thing going, I wouldn't propose a heck of a lot of changes to your proposal, but I think the process it needs to take is that the MPIC committee might adopt, some variation of what you've proposed, and I wouldn't suggest too many changes to it, and then send that, and then we get on the schedule for the selectmen, who generally appoint most of the committees, and in this case, since a lot of it is infrastructure related, that's who it would be. Just to do the civics lesson, what form can it take? Well, there's either statutory committees, this is not one of those. We're not taking adopting a state bylaw or a state,
Enabling.
law that exists and adopting it, which we do for some committees. We're not, you have the option of creating a town bylaw committee. Some committees have that form. I'm not sure that there's a need for that. Usually that takes place when the committee in question has authority to rule on issues, permitting issues or things like that. This is more an advisory committee on how to spend money and what projects to get behind. So I think just having the simple structure of being a committee created by the Board of Selectmen, following a charge, or, what did you phrase it as,
Charter? Or-
charter, yeah, whatever language is appropriate, it's fine, following that charter. And if that doesn't work, if sometimes it gets ignored, which is, I can think historically, once upon a time, many moons ago, created a capital improvement committee, and it was kind of looking over the shoulders of the various groups that, were out spending money on trucks and rolling stock, and this is so far ago that nobody who committed offenses then are even around anymore. But they were largely ignored by the departments that, that they were supposed to be advising. So if that ever became the case, then I would say, well, then we want to give it more teeth and go back to town meeting and make it formalized there with a structure that gave it some teeth. But that's a worst case scenario. I'd say in the short term, we adopt a recommendation of this, go back to the selectmen, cite the master plan topics exactly as you have 44 and 22. I think the problem is already known. I think when you explain it, you're going to get a lot of nodding heads. Yes, we get it. The fact that you've already, and I assume you've already talked with Chris Stoddard and whoever else, it's not a surprise to these people. Maybe before we present it, it would be worth our time for somebody, you, to run around to some of these outlying groups, schools, council on aging, whatever, and saying, would you have interest in having somebody participate? I'm sure they would, because if you're redesigning an intersection and you're thinking of how it impacts the facts on the ground, but you're not considering how it affects kids walking to school, then you've left out a key component, so the schools need to be in the dialogue. And likewise, you could do the same for, yes, but there's I'm thinking like Willow Road, for instance, there's not a whole lot of retail places for people to walk to, but you got a trailer park, is right there. So did anybody give any thought to the needs of those people? I know there's probably about one place they can walk to from the gas station to buy a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, but whatever. I'm sure they weren't consulted, but I mean, we ought to have a process that all those people can sit at the table and, when it's appropriate to say, hey, wait a minute, the seniors have this, whatever. So anyway, I'm in thorough agreement, and I just think in terms of process, this could be a quickie. I'd suggest you bring this back, in some modified form, ready for a vote and discussion by the full board in January, and then request time to come back before the selectmen. And I don't want to leave out the planning board, but it sounds like it's mostly infrastructure things, but obviously the planning board ought to have a role in this. I don't know whether they need to be at the appointing level on this or not, but,
Well,
I defer on that.
I just have 2 points to make that sort of echo what was said. Apparently, the Board of Selectmen have recognized transportation, mainly commuter rail and crosstown connect is their main emphasis, because Chuck DeCoste actually has that as his assignment, shall we say, he's supposedly the champion of transportation for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So it might be worthwhile.
But as a practical matter, and this is not to slight Chuck on that at all, I work with him on a lot of things. This is one issue, it's not telling tales out of school, he relishes it. Keith personally gets involved in most of the transportation
Right.
issues, so.
Right. So I was going to say, Chuck should be at least have a courtesy to be
Sure,
informed,
sure,
but definitely a conversation with Keith would be extremely helpful, even if you stick to the focus. The other comment, which echoes something in a slightly different emphasis, is nothing brings more people to the table other than food is money. And I was going to suggest that if you have identified priorities here, that doesn't mean you have to accumulate large sums of money, just whatever is appropriate. But one thing that would be very helpful to give function to the advisory board is to try to have but basically set up a system, bare minimum, where there's a constant surveillance of available funding sources out there, whether they're public, grants, whatever you want to call them.
If you're going to adopt that charge, then you
Yeah.
better be prepared to deliver on it, because right now, we're paying people in-house to keep track of that stuff.
I'm not suggesting to repeat what's already been done.
Yeah.
If they're doing it, they should be identified and alerted that you're interested. The filter should be transportation and criteria.
I would say that ought to be on the table as a topic, that this committee regularly talks with the people who are
Yes.
charged with doing it, just kind of keep their toes to the fire and see what their thinking's on it.
Yep.
I think especially in the year that Chris has been on board, he's been very proactive on that, and Keith is already pretty well tuned in it. But they never, until they bring a project back to the selectmen, right now under the current system, don't have to sit and talk about that with anybody. So, especially if, there are people on this committee that have some knowledge of those programs, that would be kind of useful too. People, like yourself or whoever should be on there who have an independent knowledge of state transportation programs or, whatever else.
So, there's your comment about, beating the bushes from some of the potential participants
Yeah.
and seeing how they feel about it. That was my intent, but I was suggested that I should probably, make sure that I was doing so under the auspices of
Give me a
this
blessing, Mr. Chairman.
before I do so. But, but is it better to, I was thinking of doing that first as well, but your recommendation is to do that before bringing something to the selectmen?
Yeah, well, it's be careful on the messaging, just to be very clear that we're considering making a recommendation along these lines, and do you think there would be an interest from Council on Aging or some other entity to, that the elders have a seat at the table when we're making transportation decisions? Of course they're gonna say yes, but I wouldn't be promising specifics, because we don't know what final form it's gonna take.
Right.
Likewise with the school and others, but, and you don't know what they're gonna turn around and tell you, but I'm sure you're gonna learn something at each of those stops, and at least they're not gonna find out about it by turning on the TV and saying, here they are talking about including us when nobody's talked to us.
Yeah.
That never goes over well, so.
No, okay.
So the approach is more an approach, rather than presenting them with a formulated.
This is exactly-
That's my
This
recommendation.
is exactly what I've been doing, which was to,
Yeah, what the-
which was
the,
say, here's a charter, and here's what I was thinking, what do you think?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
but make it clear as you can, as Paul was pointing out, make it clear as you can, this is a proposal
Yeah,
charter.
yeah, yeah.
And here's an idea, and let's take it from here, and just leave it wide open for them to respond to. And I
Yeah.
think that just takes off, that takes off the fact that we are, that we're pushing at them, that they've got to do it this way. It's got to be, open.
Now, I will comment about the number of participants. I understand what you're saying is that if everyone gets a seat at the table, then they feel, it's more of an inclusive process, and people feel, they weren't excluded. But I also know, I have my own theorem of meeting productivity, that's just inversely proportional to the number of attendees. So, it can become, a little unwieldy if you've got talking 14 different entities and trying to find a time that everyone works and stuff like that, too. So, I think there's a balance there.
Yeah, I think you help by the fact that it's proposed, at least as proposed, it won't meet that often. So, if you're only meeting a few times a year and everybody gets their information, a little bit in advance, then we can get input from them even if they can't make it. But, I defer to you on that. I just think we ought to be considering a broad net at first, and maybe you narrow that down.
I mean, that's something I would definitely ask the selectmen. If they're the ones who would be establishing it, then, there are definitely ones I'd obviously see: planning, Council of Aging, BPAC.
Well, if you have the selectmen, you're not gonna get anybody dropping anybody off the list. They're just gonna have 5 people who are gonna be adding names. I know as I sit there, so. Try to do some of that thinking before we get in there,
Yeah, so the suggestion is that take the collected wisdom that you've managed to pick up so far tonight here.
Yep.
And then modify as appropriate, and then we'll have hopefully a full house next time, and we can have a vote. We should have, but then make sure you get it to Maren in advance.
This is close enough to vote on right now. I'd just say the only reason we wouldn't is it wasn't proposed to be voted on tonight, so give people another chance to take a look at it, and I think that's wonderful.
Yep.
I agree with that. I think it's very close to being what I'd like to see. I mentioned a few things I like added, but, basically it's very, very good way it stands. One more time, we'll be through with it, and we should be ready to go.
And we've just learned what the most effective subcommittee model is, a committee of one.
Or 1.5 sometimes. All right.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
All right, so I'll hold off with any motion until our next meeting. We'll make that top of the list on the assumption that you're not going to radically.
I'm not going to change as much.
Okay, just put in the suggestions already made. I think
Yep.
you'll be in great shape. Okay. The next thing is directly related to it, discussion of liaison tasks. I think that Jonathan has more than a comment, a brief to provide.
Okay, a couple of things. I've talked so far, well, easily to the Historical Commission because I'm on it, and I would say, not bragging, but the Historical Commission has really taken very, very much of an interest in the master plan, and the Historical Commission is certainly doing things very, very much focused on what the master plan is all about, and looking at the things where the Historical Commission and the master plan sort of work together. Most notably, the biggest thing at the moment is we said completion, but we realize that completion is rather too broad a term. The considerable updating and furthering of the survey of historic resources in town, which is something that in one of these things that, we have enabling legislation from the state. The Mass Historical Commission requires that all historical commissions do. We had done this. These days, everybody uses consultants. Back when I first started this game, we did it ourselves, and we had very amateurish productions. Now we have very highly trained consultants to do this work. And currently, we have a woman, Lynn Doherty, who's been doing a great job, Jen Doherty, who's been doing a great job on this, and I gave Maren a number of things, and she printed out one of them for you for tonight, and I think you can see from the quality of that, this is typical of the work that she's done. We told her to focus, or in the proposal, we had her focus on areas around the common. So, this will dovetail, I think, very well into the work that our consultant will be, the consultant of this committee will be doing regarding the town common and its surroundings. So they will have that person or group will have the results of this work. Some of these places were surveyed by the committee that proposed the historic district back in 95, I guess it was, but they were very rough and ready, to say the least. I mean, they did them in pencil and wrote a few things, and that was the extent of it, where you can see the extent of the research that she's put into both the architectural description and the historic narrative. So I think we have something really good good for a lot of other purposes, but certainly good for the purpose of working on the town common. And so that is something that we're focusing on, and I think we see the results already. Anybody have any? You want to?
I guess the question is that part of the zoning effort, and part of the economic impact analysis is, shall we say, has to be informed to some
Right.
extent by what the commission has, shall we say, obtained.
Yes. So we will.
When, I mean, is it a finished project? Are the detailed descriptors now available, or is it something still being worked on? I'm trying to.
It's still being worked on, but we've been told that the areas that, because she's focusing on the areas around the common, though the whole project won't be done till sometime in April or May, that the areas around the common, we will have forms like this for all of those by January.
Okay.
That's great.
That's fantastic.
So I think that is, she is really working well on this. I mean, the quality, I think, is extraordinarily high, and she's been going right at it and progressing very well on that. So I think that is certainly, and it will be available for the use by the consultants who are working on the town commons.
I mean,
That's why I think it works. It fits in very well with what what they're doing. We are also working on other things, other items that are mentioned as things in the 67, the famous 67 plans. Other things are underway. Various members are working on some of them, and possibly, ready for later use. But that is the one thing that we're focusing on, and we're certainly promising, and I think we can be very assured that, barring some catastrophe, that will be done. The parts of it that will be relevant to the town common area will be done by early the next year, January, I think, as we've been told.
And any startling discoveries for the common, or uncovers?
I don't think startling discoveries. I was impressed, the few that I've seen, we were just given a sample of what she's done. The few that I've seen, I was impressed by how much of the housing and some of the streets leading off the common was originally built for workers in the Conant Mill. And a lot of housing was this sort of mill housing that was originally owned by the factory and was built for workers in the factory. Now, of course, at some point became privately owned, but
Adams Street and Lower Gold Street,
yeah,
all of that.
that stuff there particularly. I had not realized how much of that was done, and she's done a very good job in documenting all of that, when it was built and things like that. So that's the thing that struck me particularly out of what she's found. I did also speak last night, so I'm busy meetings this week, but it was short. I spoke last night to the Conservation Commission. Now, the Conservation Commission is interesting. I mean, because they have not focused so much on the items in the master plan. For whatever reasons, they are not listed as the lead actors in very many of them. I pointed out some areas where they would play a big role. One of them is that sort of corridor along 119. Zoning certainly is something that I think they should, that it's certainly something that could involve them. And I was eager to, my sort of pitch to them basically was, look at the goals and see which ones, involve the Conservation Commission, and be sure that you pay attention to them and, and work toward that. So that's, I think, what.
Did you happen to find out what particular, ask an obvious question, skill sets or expertise in particular that you saw they could offer, or that they volunteered or offered up? That they, we can cover this.
Well, I didn't so much see that,
Okay.
but maybe I could have pushed more on asking about that.
What if they volunteered? Okay.
And then the third group, I guess, it would seem like they're important, but apparently they haven't been meeting, and that's the Open Space Committee, or Open Space and Recreation Committee, or something like that. I hope tomorrow, thanks to the virtue of what we used to call, when I studied American history, interlocking directorates. Thanks to interlocking directorates, one of our members on the Historical Commission is chair of the Open Space Committee, and I sort of try and corral him tomorrow and see if I can get a time to talk with him about sort of where they're at, and
It's got to be Andrew, he's everywhere.
that's, you've got it. You've got it, yes. It is indeed Andrew, who, who's on just about every committee you can imagine, which is in many ways a very good thing, but actually, so that will be good. So that's my thing. I've also been corresponding with a few people on the CPC, and I'm trying to, they were telling me, and it didn't seem like they were quite sure when their next meeting was. They were suggesting that maybe I come to one last week. I'm not sure it actually occurred last week. I was kind of busy with planning these other things and suggested that maybe I could come to their next meeting, but I haven't heard back from them. I will get in touch with them. And also, thanks to interlocking directors, I have a couple of people on that committee are also on the Historical Commission or Historical Society or something like that, so I can talk to them tomorrow at our meeting too. But if I don't, maybe even better, I'll email them and see what the latest is on that.
Well managed,
So-
well managed.
So that's what I'm looking for, thanks to Michael. I know Michael would be mad at me if I didn't get going on some of this, so
There's all this talent.
I've been eager to get going on this, and I have somehow or other, I got the longest list of committees to contact, so I will keep going, and
Talent speaks for itself.
Well, I'm not
You just-
sure.
You came through. so-
anyway, so I will keep going on this, and,
Okay, immediate feedback on a positive level, just after you met with them last night, one of the Conservation Commission members came down to our selectmen meeting, we were also done too, and she was tickled that you'd been in to talk to her, and they, I'm not sure how it came across when you were presenting, but for them to be reminded, or that the outreach occurred, that they're not on an island, they're considered part of the loop, and that comes with both responsibilities and an opportunity to have input was welcome. So I think that's
Good. Well,
that's
this
the
is-
right approach to take. I
yeah,
think.
well, this is something, this is sort of what Gary's talked about in his plan. I like to see other kind of things like that where different boards, at least get together at least occasionally to talk about things that might be common to all of them and get a little bit more interaction between some of these groups which work on similar issues.
Yeah.
I think Gary's done a great model here. Maybe we'll try and sort of see if we can extend that model to some other entities and examples. Okay, so that's my report for now.
And speaking of space, open and otherwise, I think Paul could briefly say what happened last night is of some significance.
Yeah, reminder that as well, we're planning for the future happens in the present too. We had to deal with something that was driven by a very statutorily set timeline, and that's with the Cricket Lane property, or the Jones property, for those that are familiar with it that way, or if you're not familiar with it, there's a 11-acre parcel that was behind a house that was actually located on Hartwell Avenue, but paralleled Spectacle Pond Road and eventually came down to Cricket Lane, had been quietly farmed for forever, and the one generation passed on, and the kids were going to sell it, and since it was on the 61A, they had to offer to the town. The building price was $1 million for 11 mostly buildable acres. That's not unreasonable in this day and age at all, and we as a selectman who had to consider it within a tight time frame, and that involves calling a special town meeting to deal with the purchase of it. Got a lot of interest. First of all, from Park and Recreation folks who say, hey, it's in the master plan. We've been saying we need space for fields. And that struck early, and that was the primary driver. Then just people who wanted to preserve it as open space said, hey, we don't have a whole lot out in that part of town after you get past the Hartwell property, and kind of made sense. And then then you get the actual agricultural commission folks said we should continue it in its agricultural use because it's got a particular important soils that shouldn't be. And then of course all the neighbors around it said,
We don't want it.
well, no, we want it protected, but they even considered, and I was surprised, or some did anyway, didn't want the noise associated with having a field in their backyard. And okay, I'd never thought of that, never heard that complaint before. Somebody, don't build an athletic field in my backyard, All right, well, it might have been better than the 80 potential elderly units that you were looking at, but... And even one creative person was, from the Sustainability Committee, was pushing, well, we could put solar grids out there and,
Yes.
right, so in any event, we did not make any commitment on what the town's interest would be on it. We made it clear that that's an argument for another day, but we did exercise the option to buy it. Now that'll, all the town's authority, the selectmen's authority was to authorize a administrator, and assistant administrator for finance to come up with a funding scheme and then set a town meeting date. So the other option that we had before us last night, which we exercised too, was you can either do it yourself or you can transfer your rights to a qualified third party, like a not-for-profit environmental outfit.
It's like a land trust or something.
Yeah, exactly. We think that if any of those outfits were really interested in grabbing it, we would have already heard from them, but we're giving ourselves till the meeting on the 18th to vet that option, although in all likelihood that won't happen, and that we'll just formalize setting a town meeting vote and going forward with a proposal to purchase the 11-acre property.
And the financing of that purchase has an impact, obviously, of some type, either, probably
Yeah.
not immediate or
It's-
down
it's-
the stream, yeah.
We're in good shape financially, and, I never like to, mislead the public on that one. Not only are things well managed, but because they're well managed, we do have fund balances and the such. And, and we do have space and capital programs to do it. But everything, it's a zero-sum game. If we're buying this, then something else is not happening, or it's getting pushed farther down the line, so everybody has to understand that, and that we need to make that a little more clearer, too, what the impact is on when and if other things get funded. But it seemed pretty clear that there was no opposition in the room and very solid support. Of course, if there are 60 people that live on Cricket Lane, 58 of them were in the room last night. So they have to be conscious of who you were hearing from too. And I don't just I have no problem with that. That's the way government works. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were up to date and understand, how space is viewed, and because this topic came up during.
It's good,
our
and that-
conversations.
The other,
Proactive approaches are the best way to go, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to get these things dumped in your lap from time to time that you have no control over, and you have to make a decision. A few months ago, we had a similar, or not similar, but at least it was an open space proposal for the Smith property up in the Harvard line, and we opted not to pursue that. Now, that was a little easier decision to make because it already had a conservation restriction on it, and our interest in buying it would have been to protect it if it needed protecting, but it doesn't need protecting. So why do we want to buy it?
yeah, but that's the tricky thing. I always think, I know this is one thing I think, and I know this group, just because of our name, we'd like to plan these things and sort of see, well, but then something comes up, and, you can't necessarily plan. You don't know whether it's going to come up now or 20 years from now.
You do the best you can.
Yeah.
If we were 100% reactive, that would be horrible. But we can't be pristine in the other direction. Reality just doesn't allow it.
Yeah, and the numbers show, not all of it is, shall we say, desirable, but still, even with High Cricket Lane gone for development, 70% of space of land in Littleton is open. In other words, it's.
Doesn't mean it's open and buildable,
Yeah,
but.
that doesn't mean it's buildable, it's
Yeah.
just open, and we need to get to recreation, Parks and Recreation, because I want to see if their survey matches up with what we have in the master plan and see how much recreation we have, because that's another number. Anyway, that's another discussion. Is there any further discussion on this? Thank you very much.
Just, I've scheduled a meeting with BPAC on next Tuesday to meet with them, to go over some of these same issues. I had proposed something to meet with planning board this week, but I don't think I'm on the agenda for Thursday. I had asked, but I never heard back, and I assumed we wanted to have this meeting first, so.
Yeah.
So.
I think what you need from us is our next meeting to basically send you off with a full imprint.
I understand, but I think since I got the BPAC one scheduled already, I'm just gonna go ahead and have that discussion.
Is there any objection for him representing
No,
us over
not
there?
at all.
Okay,
No.
there's no objection?
No.
Okay.
You got it. Okay, I want to ask Maren to undertake the announcement of opportunities.
Okay,
Because she actually dissipated. Go ahead.
okay, yet another grant possibility. Mass Development, whom some of you know as kind of a real estate approach to development in the region, quasi-state entity, has a request for proposals out to provide real estate services to cities and towns. One of the items listed is master plans and visioning for sites or districts. If it's a specific site, then it has to be a town-owned site, but if it's a district or an area, then they can look at private property. Anyway, there's a meeting Thursday morning that another entity is putting on, but has invited Mass Development spokespeople in to talk about this grant opportunity. So I'm going to go to that meeting and see if there's a match with the work for Littleton Common.
What is the amount, or is it? Is it a pool?
I'm drawing a blank on the amount right now. It was. It's a good question.
I remember saying 50, but that's just. it's
Yeah,
just because it
that's
seems
what I'm
to be-
remembering too, but I don't remember where I read it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Right.
and and I believe there's a deadline. of-
December 15th.
Yes, but you said, not you said, but is it rolling? Do they have another date open, and will there be any money left after the first one is?
Well, if you don't get it in by the 15th, then there's always the chance that there's not money for the next rolling deadline, or if they don't get enough applications, then it will be rolling after that. They have a certain number of consultants that you can pick and choose from, and they have a certain number of people on staff that they can loan out to a town to assist.
And
So it's not like you get to use our players.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, as opposed to like what we're doing with the other grant, which was we use it and then we add it to our contract.
right. And actually, we have some experience with mass development in a similar process. We used mass development money to hire a mass development contractor to was BSC Transportation Group at the time to do traffic studies that led into the rezoning around the point, the area that just eventually developed into the point. So, you know,
Any comments or any alerts we should give Maren when she goes? We want to tune into certain topics. Paul, anything that you might have?
I don't, if, you're looking at what, specific lists of properties?
We're attacking it on the common.
right, look, I'm going with the mind of how well does this fit into the work that we have going for Littleton Common? Is it a good complement to that? Can we use some of mass development funds to do some of the work that we have proposed?
Yeah, the only one that I saw that leapt out at me almost right away was almost not a duplicate, but a close relative of the point. And I don't know if it's appropriate for us yet to do that, and that's the traffic in the common. And that doesn't necessarily, I mean, to me, it remains a mystery wrapped in an enigma about how to attack that appropriately. Because it could affect, it should affect how we think about zoning and about what we can do and how much growth we can expect there. And how feasible it would be to have housing and what would the housing be, that sort of question. So it's more, I hate to say it, but it's more like, what do we do with the traffic there? What's even possible? Any comments, Paul?
Well,
Sharon?
not so much on that detail, but I'm curious if you deal with somebody in mass development, who, because actually, I have a relationship, and actually Cindy Napoli and I met a couple weeks ago with Thatcher Keyser up at Devon's, who runs the Devon's project for mass development, former mayor of Amesbury, and used to work for MAPC. I don't know who's, we know a lot of those people, so whatever we want to do, I'd like to know who we're dealing with so we can make sure it's tracked properly. And if we're already dealing with mass development folks and other things, I'm not opposed to bringing that up in conversation. We're actually trying to imitate, and this is on a different level, of that organizational thing, a program he implemented, he's being Keysner at, when he was mayor of Amesbury, so he kind of loves that we're, reminding him of one of his successes and trying to learn from him. So if he's in a position to help us on this grant, I would be happy to play that card. But I guess I'd kind of like to see what you're presenting in draft form, if it's going to be written, before I comment on it.
There's the application actually is online,
Right, I have
Yes.
copies of the form.
and it's not very complex.
Okay.
It's in fact, it's the shortest application in the state ever. Ever.
And-
No, that's not it.
No, that is here. And then actually, it's the Metro West 495 partnership.
Did you already forward that to you, to us? Well, if you haven't, could you please send it along? I'd kind of like to take a look at it, I guess.
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's the 495 Metro West Partnership is introducing me to mass development through this meeting that they're having Thursday morning, or a group of us anyway. So Jessica Strunken at Mass Development's already on board and offered, if the town is going to apply, then they're willing to highlight our application and support it.
Okay.
I was just looking quickly at some of the stuff we had on our list, and I thought the corridor study could be something that could fit into something like that, and the price range that our consultant had was.
Which corridor study?
Conduct a explorative study for Great Road to plan for future land uses, open space, natural
Sure.
recreation.
That one, and I guess the other one that was on our radar
35K
screen,
price range.
we were considering it more for an adoption of the, or an extension of the overlay district zoning would be the Taylor Street, Foster Street
Yeah,
area
the other
too.
one.
That's the other one.
Yeah, okay, those are the,
So we got at least
Okay.
three candidates.
I'm almost thinking not to muddy the waters with the common, like the guy with the
Oh,
common
yeah,
person
yeah.
have their own.
One of the questions is going to be, what's the timing of this funding? And that'll help to answer
Sure,
which project we want to key.
but.
yeah, I would agree that if we already have an ask into the state on the common, we should leave that alone.
Agreed, okay, all right, no
I
problem.
remember from my days working in those government offices, if somebody comes in and asks for two things, you give them the easiest one.
Well. We should
Just,
be-
you almost you're giving them the authority to say no to the more complicated ones, so don't do it, only come in and ask for one thing.
Yeah, the other ones are quote easier. Just slightly.
Would you have what you need to turn it around if necessary?
If it looks like a good fit, we decide to apply, then
Somehow,
we'll.
I have a feeling it's going to fit. I really do. I really do. Especially for the ones that were mentioned, leaving the common out. I think those fit. I think the corridor is like a natural, and I think the Foster Street one also.
Right, a lot of the information for those, I'd reach back to the master plan.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We're not inventing the wheel here.
Right.
And that's an important point for these grantors to know, that we're not redoing, we're actually doing.
Yeah,
We're actually carrying it out.
yeah. For example, for the grant for, I would do something similar for the grant for EEA, a planning assistance grant. I just lifted several pages out of the master plan and said, this is what we're looking to do.
Yeah.
Do the same thing for the corridor study or Taylor Foster.
That sounds like a plan. Okay. Good. Thanks a lot. Oh, there's more.
Yeah, and you said the other one you have listed was the Mass Development Site Readiness Program.
Yeah.
And, yeah, MAPC
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
495 Partnership have issued a letter looking to work with the towns to update the priority development area and priority preservation areas, work that was done in 2012. Right now, they're looking for the town to appoint a key contact, and then in the next couple weeks, they say, I'm guessing months, they'll provide the detailed information, a spreadsheet for us to update and get that information back to them.
We, at least the selectmen, we got that list in that letter last night, so the
Right.
same thing you got, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
probably ought to
that's
just be
the-
comparing that against the master plan to see either if something's already done, cross it off the list, or it's no longer a priority, and then obviously if there are things that haven't been added. Once again, I think that Taylor Street corridor was not on anybody's radar screen back then. I can't remember offhand what else might jump out, but,
I think a lot on that old list were done. I mean, we've
Yeah.
gone through a lot of them. I mean, you guys went through a lot of them.
yeah,
in the
or
last
before
few
me,
years.
but I'm saying, yeah, that's the kind of vetting that needs to take place, so.
Would- So you think that would be done at the selectman level, or?
No, we were definitely looking to dish it off to somebody, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
okay, you gotta dish it off. Our hands are full at the moment.
Why don't you go in and arm wrestle Keith over there? He's pretty weak these days. It'd be a good time to get him. Well, give it to Anthony. He's the new guy. You know, there you go.
Please, Anthony's got, there we go.
No, he's okay right now. The field is done. He doesn't.
No, well, yeah, but when he told me he was gonna be, I sent him a copy of our RFP, you know,
Yeah.
he said, I can't get to it today. I said, well, tomorrow's good. So we'll see what he does.
Well, he didn't show up tonight, so he gets punished. He gets assigned.
Yeah, well, I'll
Oh,
give him a call
he's
tomorrow.
upstairs.
Oh, he's- Oh, Anthony.
Yes.
Where is he, at the AgCom meeting, or who else is
Yeah,
up there? That's the one.
I think it's ICOM tonight, I'm not sure.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
So this looks better and better. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, okay. Near-term tasks and programs that may require town funding. And the only one that I'm aware of for immediate action for tonight would be administrative support. You want to comment on that one, because that's something that will affect your work for us?
Yeah, what I've programmed into the capital plan is the request for $10,000 a year for the next umpteen years, and target that for administrative assistance. Planning board's in the process of hiring a department clerk, 10 hours a week, and that would cover that.
Have you got a candidate or candidates?
2 candidates are to meet with the planning board this week.
So they're going to make.
Finalize the interview, and I hope that they make a recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And timing is of the essence, because
Yeah.
on the December 16th, we have the budget hearings before the Finance Committee and Selectmen, so I assume it would make a difference that any vote should come before then to support it, or does it matter? You've already put in for it, is what you're saying.
We have the funding for the current fiscal year. The capital plan that I submitted for the planning department, it includes the 10,000.
Okay, but
Year,
we should have an affirming vote from this committee to support that.
That would be lovely.
Right.
That's
That,
what I'm
that
looking
is
for, Diane.
specifically for this group, rather than for the planning board, or something we share, or?
Right, only the planning board has the authority to appoint
Yes.
staff.
Yes.
So,
But-
I guess we get to arm wrestle for it? No.
But at the same time, well, we have a funding level that we'd like to continue, or a level of support, whether it's you or your assistant to be.
And I guess it doesn't matter to me how you want to arrange the funding on that. It's a capital
No,
request. And
Especially if there's any confusion there, I think it's important we get on record saying we need that level of support to continue. you know.
That's sort of like, yes, I mean, we need at least that level of support, okay? It's like, it's necessary but not sufficient. So this is, from our point of view, so I think it's important for us to make our voice very clear on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's in writing here is straightforward. The master plan, capital plan narrative, even though it's salary, it's appropriate for capital plan because it's short-term tied to a project, is that right?
Yeah, and master plan funds have been shown in capital.
Right, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, so I guess we need a motion.
To support this, right?
Yes.
Essentially, okay, I'll move that we support and request continued funding of the 10,000 master plan implementation to fund 10 hours per week planning department clerk for the fiscal year 2019.
Second?
Is there any further discussion? I hear a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried. Done. Any comments further on other items for under E? Is that, other than administrative support, do we anticipate any other requests? I don't think we have any at the moment. Maren, you
Uh,
foresee anything?
I haven't heard of
Okay.
anything. You said we're still working on
Yeah,
the fall town meeting.
yeah, I think we're at the moment.
For the common,
Mhm.
planning activity, there's going to be some outreach.
Mhm.
we're not looking to do anything comparable to what we did before.
That remains to be seen. That's-
For, that would be an expense, would that not? If we wanted to like bring like incentives for people to come to any kind of outreach session like we did before?
Be too early to request, so we don't know. At this point, we're looking for specific.
You're looking for specifics. Okay.
Yeah, we're looking for, I mean, yes, there's gonna be outreach, but at the moment, I can't tell you how, I have a pretty good idea how many outreaches are gonna be, but how expansive they're going to be, I don't know.
Okay.
It's not fair to, that's the section that we're working on, and also trying to get the timeline set.
I was trying to think of budget purposes, because it's gonna happen in this current fiscal year, if there's anything that we might wanna like include,
Well-
that's gonna be outside the contractor's purview. You know, like we had food or something like that.
Right, there will probably still be funds outside of the
Yes.
contract award
Yes.
for current fiscal year.
That we still have access to.
Yes.
Right, the budget that
We
we
have,
just voted and that is looking at now is
For 19.
19.
Okay, got
right.
it.
And-
Yeah, we still have
Got it,
a
okay.
small lump of funds left that we won't be necessarily dipping into
Okay.
for.
To be clear, we say 19, it ends in 19, it begins July of
FY
18.
FY
Yes.
19.
FY19 begins July 1st.
Right.
Well, hopefully we'll be under full steam by then,
Okay.
or past full steam. Thanks. Okay, public input. I see none and hear none.
You know, where is he? Public.
Anna's not-
I made several emails out to public, and so far.
Well, Rob couldn't make
I
it
was-
tonight?
I was told it was, well, I know what he's doing.
Okay, all right.
He's celebrating a
good.
worthy event.
Good, good.
Okay.
Anniversary or something like
A
that?
birthday
Oh,
for
birthday.
our college.
Oh,
I
God
hope
bless
that's
it.
what it is.
Yeah.
I gave him strict instructions. Okay, so anyway, all right, minutes.
Yes, I sent around draft
Yeah.
minutes late this evening.
They, for the
Actually,
7th,
and
we
actually
already
read them.
got them. Yeah, I read them, and I read them just sitting here. They're fine, I like them. I'd move approval of the minutes as presented for the Tuesday, November 7th meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I haven't read it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Wow. Somebody wants to get out of here.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got 5 calls to make, but I want to do them before 9 o'clock.
Okay, since we have no further business before it, do I hear a motion for adjournment? I think I do.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Next meeting is when?
And the next meeting is January
When-
10th.
Yeah, moving to Wednesdays.
January the 10th.
Moving to Wednesdays.
Wednesday.
We're going to work for Mike.